not only is it going to lead to no end of trouble, when the trouble comes, we're going to blame the Russians. And of course, that's exactly what happens, because we in the United States are never responsible for any of the world's problems. It's always somebody else. We are deeply committed, I'm talking more about the Americans than the Europeans, but even NATO, to the point where if the Russians succeed, then the temptation for us, the West, especially the United States, to enter the war will be very great. Biden will be under tremendous pressure to go in and help rescue the Ukrainians. So you can see the potential for escalation. And you all know that Avril Haines, the woman who is the director of national intelligence in the United States, right? She says that the most likely scenario for the Russians to use nuclear weapons would be if the Americans or NATO comes into the fight, because the Russians are not going to be able to stand up to us, right? You all know, as I said before, the Russians can barely handle the Ukrainians in the Donbass, right? The Russian military is no match for the United States, no match for NATO. And what Avril Haines was saying is that's the circumstance under which the Russians will be desperate. And you all understand the Russians believe they're facing an existential threat. Just very important that you understand this. They believe that they're facing an existential threat. They thought Ukraine and NATO was an existential threat. Well, now we're talking about a situation where you're not only being threatened by Ukraine becoming part of NATO, becoming a member of NATO, you're also threatened by the fact that the United States is talking about defeating you on your doorstep. And if the American military is to come into the fight, and the American military is fighting on Ukrainian territory right next door to Russia, this is an existential threat. This is where states use nuclear weapons.